For June in the Mystery Journal, I'm trying to go very cozy. I never know where this journal's going to end up at the time I'm setting it up, so I'm going a little cross-seasonal here, with the cozy vibes and the warm tones suitable for the southern hemisphere where June means winter, but the motif of cities and different homes may be representing travel for those of you in the northern hemisphere where June means summer. Hi, my name's Erin, and I set up this entire journal for 6 months and then gave it away to a subscriber. And I'm about to do it all again, but more on that later. This is the final setup in this journal. This is the Sage Leaves journal from Sassy Pigeon HQ, and the entire theme was inspired by this little trio of washi tape stickers. This is the Metro and Meadow set from the washi tape shop, and it is so cute and cozy. I've used the colours in these stickers to match all of the other elements that I'm using within the theme, but particularly the brown and the slightly pinky beige. I'm pairing it up with some functional sticker elements from Paper Monogatari. These are actually from the Under the Cherry Tree collection, which was from spring last year and is unfortunately no longer available. Some soft creamy beige papers, also from Paper Monogatari, and these lovely soft buttercream origami pages. Origami paper is my secret weapon. I've got this soft pink grid washi tape and also a solid beige washi tape, and I've tried to match my pen colours to the theme as best I can with these 3 brush tip markers in different shades of brown. Plus all of my usual suspects: glue tape, ruler, pencil, tweezers, that spatula thing I never know what to call. Let's get started and set up June in the Mystery Journal. I really wanted to entirely cover the first spread with my beautiful papers, and they are A5 sized already, so I'm adding a lot of glue tape down here because I want this to sit really flat. I'm quite close to the end of the book and it's gotten pretty bulky, and I also don't want it to separate from the page edges, so I'm using some glue pen as well to make sure this is really well adhered. We're working on a cover spread here for June, so I'm quite happy to take up all of the page. This is just going to be the basis for where we layer everything else on top. I'm also a fan of torn edges on paper. I just think it looks much more soft and romantic and interesting than a sharp edge. Sharp edges have their place too though, don't get me wrong. So for lots of the paper and also the washi elements in this setup, I'm going to be tearing everything rather than making precise cuts. I jumped into this with an idea of what I wanted it to look like, but that idea wasn't fully baked, so there is still some experimentation and spontaneity involved in this setup. But when you theme all of your colours really closely like this, it's honestly pretty hard to make a spread look bad. That's the power of a really strong colour scheme. One of the drawbacks of winging it like this when you're coming up with a cover spread or any other kind of page is that you may not always layer things in the order that you ultimately want them in. So I am forever peeling things up, even if it's just a corner or the bottom like this, so I can layer one more thing underneath. There's a concept in graphic design called the optical center, which is not the same thing as the actual center of the page, and our brains tend to prefer when things are centered just ever so slightly higher than the actual center of the page around the optical center, but I'd gone a little bit too hard with my optical center here, so I just needed to add something underneath to bring everything back down a little bit, which is what that extra piece of brown washi tape did. I was running pretty low on pages in this journal at this point, so I was very careful to plan out the spreads to make sure that everything would still fit, and I like to make sure the winner of this journal has a few pages left at the end to add some reflections if they want to. So we're going with a single page calendar opposite the cover page this time to make sure that everything's going to fit really nicely, but still be really functional. There's not a huge amount of contrast in the stickers or in the washi tapes that I've chosen for this theme, so I didn't want to go with black lines for my calendar this time. I do have some dark chocolatey browns on the opposite side, and the lettering is black for June there, but I wanted my calendar to feel quite soft, so I'm going with just one of my Tombow Dual brush pens. This one's the 992, and I've used the bullet end, not the brush end, to do the lines with a ruler so that they'll be nice and straight and consistent. I've made my calendar boxes 4 dot grid spaces tall and 3.5 dot grid spaces wide. I find that's the easiest way to fit a calendar like this onto a single page in an A5 journal. And then I like to leave 1 extra dot grid space tall above each of the rows along the week so I can put the number for each day in that space and have its own dedicated area that doesn't eat into the planning space. June starts on a Sunday, and the shape of the calendar that is dictated by that means that we have a little bit more space in the bottom right and the top left corners, so those are where I'm going to focus my decoration. But we're not going to go too hard here because there's kind of a lot going on the opposite page with the gingham, so we only really need a few strips of washi tape and some houses and we'll be ready to move on. that's our first spread for June all set up, so let's turn the page and move on to one of the easiest and fastest pages to set up in my opinion. This one is my one line a day. It's probably pretty self-explanatory, but this is a space to write down one sentence every day or one line. It can be a way to practice gratitude, to write down one thing that you're grateful for every day, or it can be a focusing on the good things kind of a practice where you're looking for one really good thing that happened every day, or any other way that you can think of to use this. Maybe it's a space to write down a quote from every day that somebody near you said, or the song that was stuck in your head when you woke up this morning. It can be anything at all, and I liked the flexibility of that, so I stuck with just calling it one line a day rather than a gratitude log or something to make it more flexible for the winner of this journal. I must have been listening to an audiobook when I set this up though, because I must have completely zoned out there and I entirely messed up the numbers as I was writing them out, but that's okay. That's why we have white paint markers and we will pretend that mistakes didn't happen. I also noticed when I flicked back to the calendar page there just to check the dates that I hadn't added the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday along the top of the calendar either, which is something I really wanted to make sure to include. So I'm going to use these stickers from Paper Monogatari for that, but I only want the first 3 letters of each, so I'm just going to chop them down and only use the part that I need. When you're working with tiny little washi stickers like this and you want to put them somewhere precise, like for instance the middle of a column on a calendar that marks the day for that column, like Wednesday in the 3rd one, I really recommend sticker tweezers for this. They make your life so much easier. I personally really prefer the curved ones so you can see where you're placing things really easily, but I will make sure that those sticker tweezers are linked for you in the description, as well as everything else that I'm using to set this up. At least everything else that I'm using that's still available. I've deliberately left a little bit of space on the left and right sides of this one line a day section so that I could put some washi tape here, and we'll use the top for the title and the bottom for some decoration. Now you've heard me say mystery journal a few times already in this video, but what actually does that mean? So this is a journal that I put together for 6 months of the year and then gave away as a prize on my channel, and I actually set this up back in December of 2024, so I did this a while ago. And that's because I wanted this journal, which goes from January to June of 2025, to be ready to give to the winner of this giveaway so that they could use it for these first 6 months of the year if they wanted to. It's also just really handy for me to have a video that is already shot that I don't need to make more time to create each month. It can just be edited, voiceovered, and thrown on the internet, and that's really helpful for me. Plus, I have a lot of stationery, probably more than one person needs, and I could not ever possibly get through all of it on my own, so this gives me an outlet to use some of that extra stationery and not have it go to waste, because I could just set this up and show you as an example and never do anything with the journal, but I do think it's much nicer to have it end up in somebody's hands where it might actually get some use. Obviously, this is the final setup in this mystery journal, which means there is a new one coming soon. The first setup in the next mystery journal will actually be my next video, and that is the video that will have the giveaway running on it for the next mystery journal. So if you would like one of these for yourself, stay tuned, make sure you're subscribed, and you can enter the giveaway on the video that's coming out on Friday/Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. So that's the 9th or the 10th of May. The page that we're working on here is for goals and favorites. I dare you to guess what these are for. Obviously, the goal section is for setting goals. They can be smaller broken down chunks of your New Year's resolution beginning of the year goals, or they can be totally new goals. And the favorite section is just for celebrating anything that you are enjoying in that month. When I have a favorite section in my own bullet journal, it's usually filled with music and TV shows and books, but yours might be food or podcasts or people or anything else that you can think of. If you've watched any of my previous mystery journal videos from this year, then you'll know that I am using the same pages from one month to the next so that the functionality of the journal doesn't change on the winner. If they are used to having something like a gratitude log, then there will still be a gratitude log the next month. But I like to try to vary the way the pages look and sometimes the function of those pages too. So the one we're working on right now is a habit tracker. Sometimes I like these to be individual tiny calendars, and sometimes I like them to be one long kind of a graph situation. This one is one of my favorite configurations because it's really efficient as far as page space, and that means I have lots of room to decorate, and I love having lots of room to decorate. The previous monthly setups in this journal all have room for tracking 6 habits, so this one will also have room for tracking 6 habits. And that little line of beige that goes along the top and along the bottom of this table are where I'm going to put the initial for each day of the week. So along the top one, from the 1st, I will have the initial for the Sunday because that's the first day of June. So the initials on that top row will relate to the top rows of numbers, and the initials on the bottom row will relate to the bottom row of numbers on the tracker, just so that it's sometimes easier to have a reference of did I do the thing on Tuesday rather than did I do the thing on the 17th, you know? The space to the left of the numbers is where the winner of the journal can have their habits that they want to track. Whether they change from month to month or they are the same is totally up to them. So I'm not adding anything there because I don't know what habits they want to track. That's for them to decide. Something I love doing when I want to go a little bit heavier on decoration is lettering my headings for my page on some separate paper and cutting or tearing out those pieces and layering them over the top of the decoration so that the heading kind of becomes part of the pretty. I've been using them for a few pages already, but my letter stamps are one of my favorite ways to make things look very cohesive. If you don't love your handwriting, letter stamps can be an amazing way to get a really consistent look to your lettering all the way through your setup without you having to try and write things over and over until you're happy with the way that they look. These ones have a cute little serif style to them. They're almost like typewriter letters, and I think they match really well with the font that was on the sticker that we used for the June header way back on the cover spread. So I thought that was a nice way to kind of call back to that without it being exactly the same necessarily, because I don't know what font that was, but it does kind of match enough that it feels like a continuation. The page we've moved on to here, you already know what it's for because you already saw its header when I did it at the same time as the habits one. This is a mood tracker, and this time I wanted to do something really fun. The houses obviously already feel kind of cozy, so I thought about what if we were inside the house for the mood tracker? So cast yourself beyond the windows of these little houses and imagine that you are in the living room of one of these homes, and these are all of the decor pieces on the bookshelves in their expansive, wonderful library living room setup. This is so similar to the bookshelf trackers that you see in a lot of reading journals. On those ones, you typically color in a book spine for each book that you read, but this one is a little bit different because obviously this is not a reading journal, although I have left some blank pages in between each month, so it could be used for a reading journal too if the winner wanted to. This one is obviously a mood tracker, so each of the objects I'm stamping onto the shelves is going to represent a different day in the month of June, and the journal winner can color in each one every day in the color that corresponds to their mood. I have lots of stamps that fall into the kind of witchy and apothecary areas, so that's what I had to work with here. I don't feel that I have the doodling skills to do this really well, drawing everything myself, so I'm going with my stamps. Most of these are from various sets from the Quirky Cup Collective. I have their Practical Magic set, I have their Fantasy and Fiction set, and I also have their book genres set. I've used some from all of those. And the silicone stamps are from JOURNALSAY. They're from a little set that is vintage fountain pen themed, so there's a little camera and there is an ink bottle up the top too. I've just been using a black Tombow dual brush pen to colour in the surface of my stamps. That's my preferred way to stamp things because I make less of a mess that way. You don't get any extra ink on the edges of the stamp, so you don't get those weird corners, but when it comes to those silicone stamps, like the little cameras and the ink bottles, they don't play so nicely with the brush pen colouring in system, so I've switched to a VersaFine ink pad just for those ones. The really tricky part here is making sure that you have the exact number of items to colour in for the number of days in the month, so I have to try and make sure I've got exactly 30 things on these shelves. Thankfully, my stamps are various sizes, so I can fill in little gaps with smaller ones like the candles and the conical flasks, and just keep building it up until I have those 30 days of June represented. And to make it easier for me in the setup process and to make it easier for the user of the journal, I'm adding the number for each day on the shelf below it so that it's really clear which item represents which day. There is already so much going on this page that I don't want to try to decorate it too much or it's going to look a little crazy. So I'm just going to color in the shelves with my brown calligraph. This is the lighter of the two brown calligraphs that I have. I got these in the Archer and Olive subscription boxes back in 2023, and that was before they started giving them color names or anything, so I don't know what these are and I don't know if you can still get them. I'm sorry about that. I'll add a couple of strips of washi tape along the bottom as a place to anchor the title for this page, because of course that needs to go somewhere to make it really clear what its purpose is, particularly since I'm not the one this journal is intended for. And with the little bit of leftover space in the top left corner of the page, I'm going to add a little key here with some smiley faces to represent different moods. And the winner of the journal can add little swatches of colour to those in whatever colours they prefer, whatever they have in their collection, so that each day they can colour in the appropriate item with the colour that represents their mood. We're going from what might be the most fun page of the setup to what might be the least fun page of the setup, and that's because this is a spending log. But just because she's not glamorous, don't let that fool you. This is actually a really useful page to have in your journal, especially if you've never tracked your spending before. Way back in the beginning of this journal, there is a whole cash flow spread that's about tracking your bills and your income and your savings. And this is a page that kind of ties back into that each month, where you can categorize all of your spending across whatever categories make sense to you, and then transfer the totals of that data back to the cash flow spread at the beginning and get this really holistic look at your finances and how things are going. Of course, there is a video cataloging the setup of that cash flow spread if you want to see it in the very beginning of this journal. There is a playlist of this entire mystery journal in case you want to see how the whole thing came together, and I will also have a flip through video coming pretty soon as well. The spending tracker setup itself is pretty simple. It's just a little table with 3 columns. The biggest one is for writing down what the item is that money was spent on. The second one is for category, so you can put that into any category that makes sense to you. In my own spending tracking, I usually do things like life expenses and business expenses and entertainment and dining out and groceries, stuff like that. And the final column is for the cost of those items, which you can then add up by category and move that data over into the beginning of the journal. The facing page is a very free and open one, so I'm just going to start by adding lots of second line highlights because this is really a space for some somewhat long form journaling. This page is actually intended to be used at the very end of the month because this is one that's all about reflection. So this is where you look back over those goals that you set, the things you were enjoying, the things that you did well or things that you maybe didn't do as well, things that you were trying to work on, how well did that go, what were you proud of, what are you celebrating? The reflection page is your place to just offload all of those thoughts and feelings. Remember how this journal isn't for me? Because of that, I always like to build in a little bit of extra flexibility by including a spread that is mostly blank but just lightly decorated. And this way the winner of the journal can use this spread for anything that I have not considered, that I might have forgotten or not known that they would need. They can use this spread for whatever that purpose is, and if they don't have a purpose for that, then maybe they can use it for a brain dump or for adding a quote of their choice, or just for junk journaling, adding some photos about things that they did for the month. It can be a place for memories. It can even just be a place to play with the extra pieces of washi tape and stickers that I sent along with the journal, because I do like to include some extra stuff from each of the themes so that if they need to expand or they want to add some more decoration of their own, they have the freedom to do that. This is the last setup before we move into the weeklies, but I do always like to leave a couple of blank pages in between each month as well so that there's even more flexibility. Those ones I leave completely blank, so I don't include those in these videos, but there's extra flexibility built in there as well. And that's where I like to do memory keeping spreads and junk journal spreads in my own journal, but the winner of this journal can use them for whatever they like. Which brings us to our weeklies. I like my weeks to start on Mondays, and I include that convention in the mystery journal as well. And I also like whole weeks to stay together, so sometimes that means taking a few days from one month and adding them to the weeklies of the previous or the next month. Since June starts on a Sunday, that means the first week kind of only has one day in it, and I'm not going to set up a weekly that only has a Sunday. So that Sunday has ended up staying with the May spreads, and I'm starting the weeklies for June from the 2nd. This is one of my favorite weekly spread layouts because it leaves you lots of room for planning on each individual day. You've got equal space for Saturday and Sunday, which is really important to me in my own life, so I like to extend that to the mystery journal too. But you also still have lots of room for decoration, and when you're using a decor like the house stickers that I'm using throughout this setup, they're pretty big. They're not huge, but they take up a decent amount of room, so when you're leaving this much space, you can really show these stickers off. Washi stickers are also one of my favorite ways to decorate a journal because washi paper, by its very nature, is very thin, which means it doesn't bulk up your journal too much, not like paper does. Straight paper can really make a journal thick. Something I'm introducing here that I haven't done elsewhere throughout this setup is a little bit of modern calligraphy hand lettering for the names for each day. I really like to change up the weeklies from one week to the next so that they each kind of have their own character and you can really notice that time is passing, you don't feel like you're using the same pages over and over again. And I really like the smaller brush tips on the Archer and Olive calligraphs. I think they're so lovely to letter with. I really enjoy them, and I hadn't got to use them yet, so I wanted to whip it out. But also, stamping every individual letter while also coloring in the surface of that stamp can be really time consuming. And by the time you get to spread 7 or whatever this is, it's a little tiring, it's a little wearing. I didn't really want to do it on every single weekly as well, so this was my workaround. On to weekly spread number 2, and again I am planning this weekly out with my decorative stickers in mind so that we can really balance that functionality and that pretty. The pretty factor of a journal is really important to me. I don't know that I would say it's more important than the functionality, but it is important to my motivation to actually pick up the journal and use it, so I'm trying to make sure that that is also there for the winner of this journal. Hopefully they like it enough that they will want to actually plan with it, because that would be my dream for it. I feel like for me, the most basic way to turn a spread into a weekly is to divide it into 8 sections or 4 quadrants on each of the pages. And that's basically what this is, except that they're inside boxes and the decoration runs through the center of the spread. And it is the true center this time rather than the optical center, because we really do need equal space for each of the weeklies in case you have to plan stuff on different days. I've said many times in the past that my favorite go-to way to plan a theme when I don't know what I want to do is to just pick a PET floral tape and pick a couple of colors out of that, lay those down in a solid washi tape, and then slap the flowers over the top. And to be totally honest, this theme is basically that, except with washi stickers that aren't florals for a change. And I really like the way it came together. So obviously we've got 3 strips of washi tape right through the center there, making this fun kind of a pattern, and then we'll just pop the houses down right on top of that. Once again, I am hand lettering my days of the week here because I do not feel like stamping, but I am going to go to the trouble to use these number stickers for the weekly here because I think the colors will work really nicely. I have them and I haven't had a chance to use them. This is the opportunity. Weeklies down, we've still got 2 more to go, and yeah, I have also planned these ones around the stickers. This one is a horizontal weekly, which isn't my favorite to plan with, but sometimes from a visual place is my favorite to set up, and kind of my favorite to look at through the month too, which also makes it fun to use, even if I find it a little bit less practical than a vertical weekly. Sometimes it can be really frustrating trying to fit 7 days to a spread because you can't really divide things super evenly, but this is one that can be really fun and symmetrical. If you like to include a note section, then they really can be super symmetrical. I am going to leave the note section off, however, and really utilize that space for my decoration because of course I am. I'm going to focus my really big stickers down in that section, but I'm also going to include some in alternating sides of the actual planning spaces too, and use those as a basis to put the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the little number down too, so that every day of planning also has a cute little house vignette represented on it, and you still have lots of room to do your actual planning around them. To make sure the spread still looks balanced to the eye, I'm going to alternate the side that I put my house stickers on. So on the top row, it'll be on the left, on the second row, it'll be on the right, and then the left, and then the right again. So we started out with stamping, and then once we got into the weeklies, I switched to hand lettering. But do you know what's even more expedient than that is functional stickers? So I'm going to add the day of the week stickers here. These ones are such a good color match for the theme. These are from Paper Monogatari, and I'm just going to pop those nice and close to the houses. They're a little bit transparent, so I can't layer them over the top without losing their readability, but they're also very small, so they don't take up any of the planning space really. They don't eat into any of the functional area. They just do their job really nicely and leave a good little gap for me to put the number stickers once again, continuing those on from the previous spread, so that we have some more continuity going with the colors of the numbers. We're tying in some of the greens from down the bottom, and it's overall just looking really cute. I'm happy with it. Let's move on to the final spread for this setup. This is the final weekly and also the very last spread that I'll be setting up in this video and in this journal. And because this journal was designed to cover a full 6 months, I am going to alter the way I set up my weekly here, because there is one random awkward little leftover day at the end of June that has to go somewhere. I didn't want to leave the winner of the journal without a space to plan for this one last day of the period that the rest of the journal covers, so we're going to kind of finagle this weekly into having an extra day. An extra Monday, in fact, for the 30th. The only time I really feel comfortable doing this is at the very beginning of the year, when the year doesn't start on a Monday, of course, because it often doesn't, and at the end of a journal period, whatever that journal period is. You can think of this weekly like I've divided the page into 4 columns, and I'm leaving some gaps in those columns so there'll be equal space for each of the days. We'll fill in the gaps with some little house stickers, and there'll also still be some negative space left over so that the page just looks nice when you look at it. It doesn't feel too cluttered or full or messy. There's also a little bit of room still left over at the top and bottom of the spread, above the planning space and below it, so I'm going to pop some washi tape down there because I just feel like it needs to be represented on every page for this to really feel like the theme that I want it to feel like. I'm going to have to set up a theme where I have this kind of olive green soon, because I obviously didn't use these number stickers on the first weekly, and now I've got the first weekly's worth left over, which is a bit awkward and strange, but I'll find a way to make them work. At the time I set up that first weekly, I didn't know yet that I'd be using them on the subsequent ones, so I probably could have used them on that first one and it would have been a nice consistency, but I didn't think of that at the time, so we will work with what we have. This journal is now absolutely packed with stuff. It's got Space Girls in there, it's obviously got these little houses, lots of florals, and even some koi fish. This journal's pretty thick, so I need to use my little spatula thing to get into the binding, or I can't get these stickers to lay flat enough. Obviously, I am already deep into planning for the new mystery journal, since you're going to see the first setup from it very, very soon. But if you're interested in some sneak previews, I came up with the themes for that one with my channel members in a live stream that you can watch at any time that you like if you are a Jubilant Journals or a Page Majors level channel member. And I'll probably show some little peeks at the cover spreads in my vlog as well, my journal vlog that I do once a month, but otherwise, the videos will come out every month just like these ones have done for the first half of the year. Let's take a little flip through of June in the mystery journal, the very last setup in the first mystery journal for 2025. I'm really happy with how cozy and calming this is to look at, whether you're heading into summer and things are going to be hectic and you'll be traveling to see family and friends, or if you're settling down with a book under a blanket in the Southern Hemisphere like me. I'm so glad this weather has finally arrived, because this is the time of year when I thrive. If you think you might like to enter the next mystery journal giveaway, make sure that you're subscribed and turn on notifications so that you don't miss that next video where the entries will happen. It's going to be quite different to this mystery journal and I can't wait for you to see. There are a few pages left over at the end of the book, but that is a wrap on the mystery journal for the first half of 2025. In case you're keen to see any of the previous setups in the journal, there is a link to the playlist here on the screen right now, as well as a link to another video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy.